All right, good afternoon, everybody, for another episode of Pick and Pop. First thing before I get into anything that I will talk about today, I'll just kind of state of kind of decided what I'm going to do as far as the channel goes and how often I'm going to update it. But I'll do 5 sports related casts a week. I think I'm going to do a Monday through Friday, do each day a daily sports cast, and then on the weekends, those will probably be when I upload album reviews. It likely will not be live streams, and I'll just kind of upload in a separate playlist and section of the channel to keep it separate from all of the sports stuff. But that'll kind of be something I keep up with just on the side. And of course, if something like really big is happening in the sports world, I will make a video in the weekend to address that. But I think I'm going to mostly roll with the 5 days a week for sports, and then upload some pre-recorded album views on the weekends in a separate part of the channel. What I'll probably do as far as the scope of those or what I'll be reviewing, I'm going to try and just get through as much as I can. I'll listen to as much as I can. I will likely just take an artist and review the first album of their discography and then go from there. So whatever artist I look at, I'll start with their first album and kind of do like retrospective reviews in the sense of looking at, how an album that may have been released 10 to 20 years ago, how it has impacted the music industry and their careers and everything since, and how well it's aged. So that'll kind of be like an aspect of the review that I'll try and bring into it a bit more. It's just kind of looking at where it's been since. And I will do a few contemporary reviews as far as things that are being released currently, but I'll mostly be doing like retrospective reviews, mostly within my lifetime. I would say I may go a bit earlier for artists that have predominantly made music in my lifetime, but maybe started before. For instance, Green Day, which was the first band I ever loved, started making music before I was born, obviously, as I was born in 96. So enough of that. Going to start talking about, I guess, what is important and what has been dominating the headlines. And last video I made was talking about the LeBron James and Michael Jordan debate, which is, of course, very argumentative and always will be. But we had a very busy weekend in baseball, and there was actually news that just broke probably around 15 minutes ago. The Red Sox are placing Xander Bogaerts on the 10-day DL. He's expected to miss 10 to 14 days. Just something to note, considering that the Red Sox are 8-1 and have kind of been the team that is most firmly taking control of their division. Although you got to give a shout out to the New York Mets, who beat Washington on Sunday Night Baseball again last night. They pulled off a weekend sweep of the team. They're 7-1 now so far this season. They're looking really good. Pittsburgh being 7-2, Arizona 7-2, Houston 8-2. But put aside all of the records in the early going, the big story in baseball has been none other than Shohei Ohtani, who yesterday, after his second start, continued to just dazzle everybody. And he was flirting with perfection yesterday. He ended up going 7 innings, 12 strikeouts of shutout ball. And that is just really incredible. If you just look at his line through 2 games, a 2.08 ERA, 13 innings, giving up 4 hits, 3 runs. And the 3 runs were on a 3-run homer. So I think that is also something to bring up, is that there was only 1 hit that he has given up that has resulted in him giving up runs. He has 2 walks and 18 strikeouts. So through 2 starts, he has a .462 whip and 2.8 hits per 9 innings ratio. Oh, and by the way, in the 4 games that he has appeared as a designated hitter, in 18 at-bats, he has 4 runs, 7 hits, 3 homers, 7 driven in, and a walk. That makes out to a .389 batting average and a 1.310 OPS. Now, obviously, it's easy to get excited after 2 starts and 4 games, but I think what a lot of people are legitimately excited about, and why I think all of this hype is legit for a big reason, is because he's come up and he's played in the MLB for a few games now, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of disconnecting factor. And I think with a lot of players that have come overseas before, not just in the MLB, but you see it in the NBA sometimes, and in the NHL not really, because most of the players, I wouldn't say most, but a very high percentage of them come from overseas. But when you have a highly anticipated player coming from overseas, whether, that's somebody coming from Japan or South Korea in the MLB, or in the NBA, somebody coming over from Eastern Europe, guys that, play in a different league that is understood by everybody to be of a lower competition level than, say, the NBA and the MLB. So you just never know. And obviously, like, there have been the cases in both of those sports, especially in the NBA, where I think, it's become more and more prevalent over time. And of course, there were people that made that possible, guys like Drazen Petrovic, rest in peace. And then, of course, in baseball, guys like Kazuhiro Sasaki and Ichiro Suzuki that made it possible and a lot more common for players in Japan to come over. So, those have all been factors in the past. And I think when you have these hyped players, there's just so much energy surrounding them. And it's so exciting because we don't really have anything to base it on. It's like, is he this good? And I remember this was a big thing when Masahiro Tanaka came up. It's like, wow. I mean, the guy was 24-0 over in Japan. And, it was at the point where everybody was like, if you're 24-0, I don't care what it is, let's get him up here. And I feel like most people, including myself, has been to my understanding that Nippon Professional Baseball League, which is the primary baseball league in Japan, is of a level in between AAA and the MLB. It's like AAA plus almost. You should get that insurance. Huh? Bad joke. But so it is at a lower level than the MLB, but when you have guys like Tanaka, have guys like Ohtani that are just dazzling and putting up these otherworldly numbers, and this is the same league where former Chicago Cub Matt Merton has the single season hits record. So, it's not like, while there is high competition in this league, it's not like it's the MLB. But, we see him come over, and I think it's not that it necessarily needs to be sustained at this level. It's that, oh, wow, we know that not only is he capable of shutting down a lineup as a pitcher, we know he's capable of hitting monster home runs in the MLB. And that is what is crazy. It's because I think everybody knows it's inevitable that he's going to go through a stretch where he really struggles, both on the mound and at the plate. But I think what he brings to the table for this team, in just the sky-high potential that he has, is really, really otherworldly. And I was really hyped about him coming in. I thought that once he got up, he would only be able to do one. He gets through spring training, doing both, and he's doing both big time in the big leagues. So, I mean, that really, really is incredible. So I am excited to see a lot more of him. I think he's going to be a great player to watch this year. And I think the Angels are going to be a great story, from Mike Trout, who has had an early season struggle, and the Angels are still 7-3, from them having somebody to play with, from having such a solid defensive unit. I would expect them to maybe add a pitcher at the deadline, but that's a team that I'd look out for to make the playoffs for sure. So that's really exciting in that case, and certainly what has been a big part of the headline so far in the baseball season. So, that has, of course, been really fun to watch, and I'm sure everybody else has really enjoyed watching him, play at this level. In other news in baseball, Giancarlo Stanton, really rough start with the New York Yankees. He struck out 16 times over the span of 3 games, so that has certainly caught headlines. And the Yankees aren't really looking like the team that we thought they would be so far. Of course, it's just 10 games, but they dropped another one to the Orioles yesterday, 8-7 in extra innings. And yeah, Giancarlo Stanton 0 for 7 with 5 strikeouts, hitting 167 so far. And of course, that's something that's going to get better, but he's also the kind of player where you don't 100% know if he's going to be able to hit for average in a given season. It's not a given that he's going to be able to bring up that average to a 275, 280. It may be 250, but it is a given that he's going to give you home runs as long as he is healthy. So that is something that, of course, Yankees fans are looking forward to, and that they've seen a glimpse of a few points so far this season. So that's certainly been a lot of fun. As far as this week in baseball, the Cubs are supposed to have their home opener today, but snow got in the way there in Chicago. The Rays and the White Sox were also supposed to play on the south side of town, both of those games did not, or actually, no, the Rays and White Sox did play. So the Cubs are making up that game tomorrow. I believe they were just able to get the field ready in better condition for the White Sox, but they are playing. Rays and White Sox, I assumed that game was postponed, but it's going on right now, 5-4 in favor of Tampa Bay. The Cubs will have their home opener tomorrow against Pittsburgh. Brewers and the Cardinals are starting up a series. That's in St. Louis. That'll be on ESPN tonight, actually. Tigers and Indians. Tigers 3-0 on the road so far, 4-4 on the season. They get a good challenge, and the Indians looking to take the series to kind of solidify who they are. Rough start to the year at a 4-5 record. The Blue Jays and the Orioles will start their series for the week. It'll be the Braves and Nationals, Reds and the Phillies, the Mets and the Marlins. Mets have a good chance to stay hot. The Angels and the Rangers, Astros and the Twins, Mariners and the Royals, Padres and the Rockies, and a really exciting matchup between the Diamondbacks, who are 7-2, and the Giants, who are 4-4. So some good series definitely for the week and things to look out for in the MLB, but we're transitioning to a lot of action in the NBA, and today is really heavy on playoff implications. Of course, this weekend we had some good games. Saturday was really exciting, watching the Thunder play the Rockets. Pelicans and Warriors was also a very exciting game, and I think in that Oklahoma City-Houston game, we kind of saw that this Thunder team, as I've kind of alluded to in the past, they really are capable of playing with anybody. And of course, it took them really shutting down the Rockets at pivotal moments. And it also took Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony all scoring in excess of 20 points, which of course isn't always going to happen. But that is what they built that team around. Ideally being the case most of the time is that you would have that big three be able to give you a lot of offensive production. And ideally, because they are three guys, I mean, Carmelo Anthony's led the league in scoring before. We know what kind of player Paul George is, and he's capable of scoring 45, 50 any given night. And then, we obviously know Russell Westbrook does. So that's kind of the thought behind it, is that this is something that is supposed to have happened a lot more, and there's a lot of reasons for it. And of course, the chemistry in the early season just didn't get going as quick as a lot of people thought it would, and then moving on from that point, they got hot for some periods of time, but they also never really settled in as a consistent winning team this year. And I think that's something that of course was kind of interrupted by Andre Robertson's injury, but I mean, this is a team that, if they are able to lock it down in the playoffs, they can really be a tough matchup for really anybody, and certainly Houston, if that ends up being a second-round matchup, or who knows, maybe even first with how things may still shake out. And then Pelicans and the Warriors is a very exciting matchup. Warriors lose at home again. Who would have thought that they would be 29-12 at home? But the Pelicans picked up a big win there. Anthony Davis had 34 in that win. And then yesterday, not a whole lot of games that really impacted the playoff race, but Philadelphia put themselves into that 3 seed. They're 50-30. They've won 14 in a row, which is just absolutely insane. And this team, and keep in mind, this is without Joel Embiid. So when Joel Embiid does come back, and the Sixers hope to get him back at some point in the middle of the first round, it can really be bad news bears for the Eastern Conference, because I don't think anybody wants to play the 76ers right now. They have weapons on all parts of the floor. They have really, really good defenders. And I think Robert Covington in the postseason is really going to take that to an even higher level. He's somebody that it has that reputation of being a 3-and-D player, but I think the amount of intensity and, just watching him play on any given night, the amount of intensity that he plays with, and the fact that he hasn't had a chance to really be on that big stage yet, it'll really be fun to see what he can contribute to the Sixers, especially while there's still an Embiid's absence. As far as anything else that went on last night, the Utah Jazz clinched a playoff berth. Really impressive, a 47-33 record for the Utah Jazz this year as they secure their spot in the NBA playoffs. They were a 5 seed in the playoffs last year, 51-31. And who would have thought the next year, dealing with all the injuries that they dealt with and losing Gordon Hayward, that they would end up with the second best defense in the league and a 47-33 record. Certainly, you have to think that Quinn Snyder is a candidate for Coach of the Year with what he's been able to do with that team. And they've been a lot of fun to watch, especially, since the trade deadline where they retooled, and they've really, really been a dynamic team. So much of that has to do with Donovan Mitchell, who had 28, 9, and 8 last night, nearly a triple-double against the Lakers. And then they have arguably the league's best defender in Rudy Gobert. So certainly all things to look at. And that's a team that, as of right now, if the season ended today, they'd find themselves in a matchup with the New Orleans Pelicans. They're currently the 5, the Spurs the 6, the Thunder the 7, and the Timberwolves the 8. The Clippers did get eliminated from the playoffs over the weekend. So the Nuggets are currently tied with the Timberwolves record-wise. So that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out, especially because the Timberwolves and Nuggets play each other on Wednesday, the final day of the regular season. So as far as games with playoff implications tonight, there are some. The Thunder and the Heat play each other. The Heat will end up as either the 6, 7, or 8. So I think everybody will be dying to play the Celtics at this point, but who knows? The Heat will be playing the Thunder, and that game will kind of have an impact of what happens there. But, of course, Oklahoma City looking to lock themselves into a playoff berth. And if they win tonight, they do that. They do clinch a playoff berth if they win tonight. So the Cavaliers and the Knicks play. Cavaliers, of course, looking for the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference after 76ers won again. Magic and the Bucks. The Bucks will end up as a 6, 7, or 8. So that game will have an impact in that regard. The Timberwolves, a must-win home game against the Grizzlies, should be one that they take. The Kings and the Spurs. Spurs will lock up a playoff berth with a victory against the Kings tonight. Trailblazers and Nuggets. That is huge for the Nuggets, of course. Denver rooting for a big upset with the Grizzlies and Timberwolves. And Denver, if they win, would then move ahead of Minnesota. Portland doesn't really have a whole lot to do. They're kind of locked into the 3 seed where they are, so it'll be interesting to see how that game plays out. But, of course, it is a potential playoff matchup, so who knows? And then the Pelicans and the Clippers, that'll be a really good game, and that, of course, has playoff implications as the Pelicans are looking to clinch their playoff berth, which they are a win away from doing, and they have not been to the playoffs since 2015, trying to do what they can to get Anthony Davis back to the playoffs. So those will be really exciting matchups. Really good games tonight. Some other games: Raptors, Pistons, Bulls, Nets. That's a lottery battle right there. But yeah, a lot of playoff implications going on tonight. And of course, the playoffs begin on Saturday. But if you're very anxious for playoff action of some sort, the Stanley Cup playoffs begin on Wednesday and the matchups are set. That'll be really exciting. There will be 3 playoff games on Wednesday to start off the playoffs. And I'm basically, even though I don't really talk about hockey too much on here because I don't think I've followed it enough this year to have that profound of an opinion on it, but I do love the Stanley Cup playoffs and take a look at these series and give you my mostly uneducated pick on who I think is winning. But Wednesday, the Wild and the Jets will face off in Game 1 in the Central Division 2-3 matchup. That'll be really exciting. Of course, Minnesota looking to take that next step, kind of go back to the conference finals that they've been in once in franchise history, and that was in their second year of existence. But they'll be playing a Winnipeg Jets team that hasn't been to the playoffs in 2015. That was the only time they made the playoffs since they've been in Winnipeg, and they were swept out of the first round. So there's certainly a sense of urgency with Winnipeg having home ice advantage for the round, having a guy like Blake Wheeler who has come through with 68 assists and 91 points, Patrick Laine, a 44-goal scorer, and then Eric Staal, a career renaissance, scoring 42 goals for the Wild. So that'll be a really, really exciting series. I like the Jets, though. I think they win it in 6. I think that there's just a whole lot of talent in that top 6 as far as their first 2 lines, and I think that that'll be some more upfront firepower than what Minnesota is able to offer. And I think also a world of credit has to be given to their goaltender, whose name is escaping me at the moment. And I am embarrassed that that is happening to me right now. But of course, Winnipeg finishing with 114 points, which was their franchise high since moving Connor Hellebuyck, the Michigan native. A lot of credit goes to him. I mean, the Jets looked like a team that they were locked into Andre Pavlik as their goalie, and then Connor Hellebuyck, who debuted a few years ago, comes up and ends up playing such an instrumental role in bringing the Jets back to prominence. So I think they win the series in 6. Flyers and Penguins, they start on Wednesday. That'll be very, very entertaining. Of course, one of the best rivalries in hockey. Every time they play, it's essentially nationally televised. Claude Giroux having a career year, 102 points, 34 goals, 68 assists. And then, of course, the Malkin-Crosby complex still at the top of their game in Pittsburgh, the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions. And while I think this will be a very entertaining series, and while I think everything has been going Philly's way, of course, with the Sixers win streak and the Eagles winning the Super Bowl and Villanova winning the championship, I think Pittsburgh's experience will make the difference here. I mean, this is a very energetic Flyers team, and one that has a lot of good young talent. I really, really like Shane Gostisbehere as one of the best young defensemen in the NHL. But I do think that the Pittsburgh Penguins win an entertaining 7-game series in that matchup. The Kings and the best story in sports, arguably, this entire year, the Vegas Golden Knights, they play in a first-round series, and I'm rolling with Vegas. William Karlsson, the surprising 43-goal scorer, leading the way for the Golden Knights. Andrei Kopitar having his own career renaissance, reaching a career-high 92 points. But I like the Golden Knights. The Kings kind of snuck in at the end. Vegas proving everybody wrong the entire year, and I really like the story, and I think that they'll be able to make their way through the series, even though the Kings, of course, still have an incredible amount of Stanley Cup playoff experience on that team. But I go with Vegas in 6 there. Devils and Lightning, they start on Thursday. That'll be a great series. New Jersey is a great story. Of course, Taylor Hall didn't have a great year in his first year with the Devils last year, comes back this year, scores 39 goals and gets 93 points and brings the Devils back to the playoffs, their first time in the playoffs since they went to the finals back in 2012. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, after a 1-year absence, they're looking to recreate what they were able to do in 2015, make it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. They made it to the conference finals a year after and were left a game short, so they're looking to complete the journey this year, and I think they handily get past the Devils in 5 games on their way to doing that. Maple Leafs and the Bruins, that will certainly be an exciting series. Game 1 for that is on Thursday, divisional matchup. Toronto gave the test to Washington last year, stretching them to 6 games. And while the Bruins have looked great all year, I gotta give it to Toronto here. I think the Maple Leafs finally win a playoff series. I think they win this one in 6 games. James Van Riemsdyk having a really solid year, 36 goals. He was a 2nd overall pick back in 2007, and it was an expectation of his that he would be a prime goal scorer in the NHL, and finally having a season where he lives up to that. And then 21-year-old David Pastrnak having a 35-goal year for the Bruins, and Brad Marchand following up on his outstanding season that he had last year. But I like the Maple Leafs in 7 there. Blue Jackets and Capitals, that'll be a lot of fun to watch. Columbus looking to get past the first round for their first time in franchise history. I think their chances to do so are pretty good. I think Washington's real chance was last year as far as having a team that was equipped to make the run. Not that I do not think that they're not good this year, but I just don't think that they have the depth to really make it too far. And you look at Artemi Panarin, who was an offseason acquisition for the Blue Jackets coming over from the Blackhawks, comes over 27 goals, 55 assists, picks up 82 points, and ends up being significantly the best scorer on that team. And I think he's going to be instrumental and use the playoff experience that he does have to his benefit. And I pick Columbus in 7 there. Avalanche and Predators, Nashville, they were 2 games away from the Stanley Cup championship last year, but they'll have to get past the Colorado Avalanche in the first round. Now the Predators, they kind of see the scripts flip this year. Last year, they were the 8th seed. They were the team that was the definitive underdog against the heavily favored Blackhawks. And they ended up sweeping them. And this year, they're the President's Trophy winner, the clear favorite in the Western Conference by many accounts, and they're playing a team that sneaked in on the last day of the season. But this is an Avalanche team that I've been saying for a long time has so much talent, was just not as good as they should be. And this year they finally were, especially Nathan MacKinnon having 97 points. And I think it's going to be a long series. I do like the Predators in it, but I think that they're going to certainly experience more of a challenge than they anticipate. I go Nashville in 7 there. And then the Sharks and the Ducks, the Battle of California. Great rivalry, great matchup. Every time, I see this matchup, I remind myself of the 2009 first round series where San Jose was a President's Trophy winner, setting record paces during the first half, and then they end up losing to the Ducks in 6, famously going down, or infamously, perhaps, if you're a Sharks fan, 2-0 after those first 2 games at home. So that was a really exciting series, and one was at the beginning of my hockey watching career. But it'll be really good to see those 2 teams that are both really hungry to make it back compete. Of course, the Ducks were very close to going to the Stanley Cup final last year, falling short in the conference final to Nashville. And then San Jose still a bad taste in their mouth from losing in the Stanley Cup final back in 2016 and what was their franchise's first trip there. But in that series, I like the Ducks. I just think they're the better team, and they have more refined experience. I really think that the great mix that they have of veterans and the young players, while they're still young, guys like Ricard Raquel, notably, they've still been on multiple deep playoff runs. I mean, you look at them making the conference finals in 2017 and making the conference finals and being a game short of the Stanley Cup finals back in 2015. So I think that those are all big factors, and I like the Anaheim Ducks in 7 games there. So that is pretty much all I have for you today. I'll be back tomorrow taking a look at the refined NBA playoff picture. It'll certainly look different after tonight's action, and then maybe enjoy your Monday. This is all I have for you today. This has been Pick and Pop with Peter Marzano. Enjoy.